Start recording. Hi, everybody. This is TJ Morris, ET Radio for American Communications Online, and TJ Morris ET Radio and Aquarian Radio. And I am your host with ACO Club. We have ACO Radio Club with a mad painter. Uh, his name is T.R. Becker. And tonight, Bret Lueder, who's been with us since 2012 with the American Communications Online, or ACO Club, ACO Radio, with me, Janet, and Mad Painter, our T.R. Becker. So tonight, after the conjunction, we've had a lot of different things going on in the world, and we're going to do a little bit of a discovery tonight. And Bret has a degree in journalism and is calling in from California. Actually, I turned around and called him. So, and Janet Carolesson is from Hawaii. So the best thing I can tell you is that we're discussing portals and dimensions and realms and universes. And so this is going to be really a knowing cosmology ascension age. And I happen to write the book available on Amazon and Lulu, Knowing Cosmology Ascension Age by Theresa J Morris. And I've got a lot of stuff in audio and video. So this is just one of many, and we're going to do a live show. Now, let me get Janet on here, that's been my co-host for years with Aquarian Radio, and she will help me syndicate and do PR work. So, Janet Carolesson, would you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Janet Carolesson. I've been doing radio with my co-host here, Theresa J Morris, and my other co-host, Sasha Alex Lesson, since 2012, but we've been doing television and radio since we met in 1997, and then I was doing my own stuff before then. I ran the Penn State UFO discussion group, which turned into a conference. Anyway, I've been doing conferences, and I've written 10 books with my husband and some on my own, and I've got 2 or 3 in the works. So busy life. And we're excited to be here. We have Bret Lueder. I can pull up his. Anyway, we're not going to pull up his bio. We're going to let Bret talk about himself. But I guess today's show, we're going to focus on Bret Lueder and your life story and who you are. And I'm really excited about talking about the current issues that are going on in the world now with disclosure. What does that mean? Who's disclosing what? What's information? What's disinformation with the secret space program? I know Theresa and I have both been involved. I guess you call it the secret space program. I spent a year on a remote location, an underground base called Johnson Atoll, which is part of the group that people rotate with: Kwajalein, Marshall Islands, Greenland, Antarctica, and Johnson Atoll. So they're all part of this system of military that rotate from base to base and interacting with extraterrestrials. But I didn't want to take this show up by myself here, so let's bring on Bret Lueder. Welcome to the show, Bret.
Hey, thanks for having me, ladies. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we're real excited to hear from you. I know you took a trip to Antarctica a couple years ago, and we haven't really spoken since then. I think it was June of 2019 we had a show on Aquarian Radio through the Revolution Radio system that I work with as well. So what's been happening with you for the last 2 years in regards to extraterrestrials and paranormal?
Oh, he's a world traveler. I didn't know
first,
that.
You let him talk.
Okay, well, first I just have to set the record straight. You're referring to Brad Olson, who went to Antarctica 2 years ago.
Oh!
Okay,
I have to talk. All people mixed up.
But he's a good man. Let's give Brad a plug right now. You know? This is Bret Lueder.
Hi, Bret. Hey, I'm sorry. You know what? I didn't get a chance to call up like we did with you, but I'll call it up right now. Okay, the last show was 6/6/19. And what were we talking about? About your 2 books, Song in the Heart, the story of the search for the lost note, and then I guess let's get an update on what books have you written since then. We're talking about UFOs. What are they? What do they represent? Billion Dollar Case, Semiosi, Inner Earth. How are they related? How are UFOs? Anyway, we had bunch of, sorry about that. I just pulled you up. So, but I think that would be fun to put the two of you side by side, you and Brad.
Yeah, there's a lot of crossover between Brad and I. We've had a chance to talk about it. We're not really quite sure what to make of that, but he's a tall Brad. I'm a tall Bret. He's a Olsen. I have Olsens in my family. We both like to write about paranormal and conspiracy stuff, and we like the word esoteric. Both of us use that in our in our marketing. So there's a lot of crossover between Brad and I. He's a great guy. We're relatively new friends just in the last couple years. I met him at Contact in the Desert a few years ago, and we stayed in touch ever since. And he's the one that went to Antarctica on a private tour on a schooner, I think it was. And I don't think he saw anything conspiracy related, but just in terms of a journey on Earth that a human can take. There's not very many of us that can say that we've been to Antarctica, is there?
No. I almost went, but I didn't want to go where it was that cold. So let's go back and focus on you then. What do you know? I can't hear you. You're down a well. What? Come back up to the surface. You fell down a voice well.
I said I just got through talking to Brad Olsen 2 days in a row now.
Interesting.
Oh, good. So you're talking to the Brett tall people.
But then Brett called me, and he's filling in tonight for our Wise Women, and I'll have to go change that title and figure out how to do MP4 to MP3. So Brett is a teacher in cyberspace, apparently, and doesn't know it, because the last time I talked to Bret Lueder, he was on one of my shows, and I couldn't get in my studio and a Mad Painter that night. So Brett and I went on Skype, and he taught me. He said, I've never done it, and then I've done some since. So Brett, you may not know all the power you have and energy as a human in human form, but I learned from you, and I learned from Brad, and I learned from Janet, and I'm really good at being a reader, writer of books and radio host, but I'm really not as good as I try to be a psychic medium, which, I'm trying to help people. But I find that curious that you and Brett are both tall, and I've met Janet, and she's beautiful, spirit, lots of aura, a lot of Shaktipad, and her husband. And so have you met Janet and Sasha? And if so, we still need to get your intro in your bio, the way you see yourself. But I just wanted to say that because people, we're sorry we're not on our radio shows right now on Blog Talk where our listeners can hear us. So this is an impromptu because we're filling in with Brett. Now I'm doing it. So Janet and I,
see how you guys are, huh?
So we'll start over.
This is horrible.
This is not Brad Olsen from Antarctica, although we are working on a project together and with other people too. And he and I both do marketing and videos, audio and video. And Janet and I do audio. She's been in some of my trailers, and we're going into the future.
Can we get Brett's story right now?
Well, let's let him start over,
Brett.
Janet.
Okay.
He was saying he's not Brett. Let's start over. This is Bret Lueder of California. Bret, start when you were a child, a little boy, and move forward. Include Harold and Shambhala and Harold's venture and yours. But start like you're saying a timeline, and I'm going to mute and listen.
Okay. Well, it was a starry night back in 1968, April 12th. All the stars aligned, and I was born. And then from there, I lived a humble life with some middle-class parents. And very early on, when I'd visit with my real father, we would watch Star Trek, and I'd sit in his lap and watch Captain Kirk and all that stuff, right? And so from an early age, I was getting sci-fi deep ingrained with me. And so shows like a Star Trek or Space 1999 was really big for me. Walt Disney's The Black Hole was really big for me. You know, In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy, that was huge. And so, you know, at a really young age too, I also saw Out on a Limb with Shirley MacLaine, where she takes the out-of-body journey from the jacuzzi. I don't know if you guys saw that, but she talked about the cord. Okay, she talked about the cord that connected her. And so I was getting, that's a really advanced teaching, right? And I was probably like 8 years old when I saw that. And I always remembered that, right?
I was in the Navy, so, my little kids. So you're my little kid's age, because I know exactly where I was when I saw that on TV. I was in the Great Lakes in the Navy with my children. We sat down intently. So you're Angela's age. You were born in 80. What year were you? Let's see.
68.
85.
He said 68. No.
Oh, 68.
Thank you, Janet.
No, 68.
And that came out 85 or 86.
Thank you, Janet's listening.
All right. So let's tell people when that came out so we can be critics or if we liked it. So Shirley MacLaine, Out on a Limb. I was in the Navy. You were in California as a boy sitting on you were about 12 or 13, weren't you?
Maybe, but I think I was younger than that. I'll stay open to that because I don't remember for sure. I'd have to go back and look and try to compare like what you're doing right now. But I was really young when that movie came out on TV. I was really young and saw it.
Well, I know it was 85 or 86 because all my girls were out for the summer.
I'm looking it out.
Yeah, well, it was much earlier than 86 because I'm graduating high school by 86. So it was definitely in the 70s.
Oh, here.
Yeah, I mean, they made it
here.
87.
Okay, I'm pulling it up. It's IMDb 87.
That's it.
That's when Shirley MacLaine's movie came out? No.
Yeah, that's how old you were.
No, I don't know.
12.
I don't know. I'm looking it up. If it's on the internet, isn't it 100% true? Let's go back to Bret's story. I'll do some research, but I'm pulling up Rotten Tomatoes.
87 is when you saw it. He's 68.
Definitely in the 70s. Let's put it that way. Okay. So anyway, I had this when I think I was like 10, maybe 11. We had some family coming to town into San Jose Bay Area, California, and we went to the Olin Mills Picture Studios. You remember those things?
I remember those. Yeah.
Oh, right. And so you go get your family portrait or whatever. So we got a family portrait, and right before the photographer called us into the studio, you know, we're out waiting in the lobby. I, like a smart aleck little kid, ran over to the Alhambra water bottle thing and put my mouth to the nozzle to take a quick drink, something that my mom would have like not approved of. And I wound up drinking from the hot side. And so I wound up scalding my lips, and it ran down the side of my cheek a little bit, and I had a mild burn, right? So then we go into the picture, we take the picture. When I know what to look for, since it was me, I can see a slight blemish in the picture. But more importantly, that day, my parents took me to the Century Theaters, and we saw Chariots of the Gods, and the Von Daniken movie. And so I looking back on that, I find that as a pivotal moment because I sat through that movie as a roughly 10-year-old boy in pain the whole time because of this mild burn on my mouth. And I feel like that burn was meant to drill that stuff home to me, that I would always remember that day because of the burn. It would help me to remember. And so it seemed, I went through my whole growing up and just had a casual interest in UFOs and paranormal, but I always liked the paranormal movies and stuff. Star Wars, of course, was huge for me. But it wasn't until college that I had some friends I played soccer with, and they were from Santa Barbara. And two of my buddies were civilian draftsmen on Vandenberg Air Force Base, which is out of Lompoc, which is, like within an hour of Santa Barbara, roughly. And so after they graduated and moved on, a lot of people moved from Chico, which is where I went to college at Chico State University. A lot of people moved from there after they graduate, and my two buddies, this one in particular, moved back to Santa Barbara. and wound up getting a job back on the base as a civilian. I think he was a draftsman. It may have been another kind of a hair-splitting title or something. I forget exactly. But at some point, he called me back up in Chico and said, man, I got some stuff you need to see. And so, of course, that piqued my interest. I was already going. It was the holiday season. I was planning a trip from Northern California down to Southern California to see a bunch of relatives and, of course, some friends. So I made my buddy a stop on that trip on the way back up, making my way back up north. I stopped, met him in Santa Barbara, and he showed me what I've come to call the packet. And it is a 32-page document which explains several of the major conspiracy theories like Kennedy. It says that the Zapruder film showed who shot Kennedy. It talked about the gray aliens and why they do cattle mutilations. It talked about who the aliens are, how they created Jesus, supposedly. A whole bunch of stuff all mixed together, right? I was blown away. At the end of this document was a couple pages of like small paragraphs that were UFO reports. And, two of them were from Red Bluff, California, which was just an hour north of where I was in Chico. And so I became really fascinated with this document. And then it turns out that I researched a little bit more. It turns out that document is supposedly an affidavit by William Milton Cooper, or AKA Bill Cooper, who wrote Beyond the Pale Horse, and Behold the Pale Horse, excuse me. And so I was getting like in the fast lane of conspiracy stuff with UFOs, and so I was just blown away, right? We stayed up all night talking about it. I went down to Santa Cruz the next night, met some friends. I have a copy of the packet, right? So I'm showing all my friends. I had like 4 nights in a row working my way back up north with friends, talking about the packet, all the great conversations deep conversations that sparked. And on my way home from Pleasanton now, about 4 days later, I'm working my way back up Chico, and there's a hypotenuse to the triangle. So if you want to go directly east on Highway 80, you go right to Sacramento from the Bay Area. And then if you want to go north on I-5, you head up to Northern California, Oregon. So it's like a right angle, right? Well, there's a highway in between 80 and 5 that's known as Highway 505. And although these days it's a little more built up, back then in the early 90s, it was barren. I mean, there's barely anybody there, 1 or 2 gas stations in the whole thing. And as I would go back and forth during my college years between San Jose, my hometown, and Chico, where I was going to college, oftentimes I would stop at Road 14 in Zamora. That's the most northern exit from 505 before you get to I-5. Or it's the first one as you're heading back down from Chico south to San Jose. You go from I-5 to 505 and you hit that first exit. It's Road 14 in Zamora. Anyway, I was heading back north on this occasion. It was nighttime, and I wasn't tired, but I was going to pull over at Road 14 in Zamora exit because I know the pavement ended and a gravel road picked up, and there's usually no one there. And so on this night, I had to go to the bathroom. So I thought, well, this is a good spot to do it. So I went to Road 14 in Zamora exit, went west on Road 14, and, it's about a quarter mile, half mile down the road ends. And I turned my little S10 Blazer around and parked it, heading it back out for when I was done. I got out of my car, walked to the back of the vehicle to go.
Uh-oh.
Hello?
Hello?
Hello? Where'd he go?
I'm here. I think he dropped off. Can you go call him back?
Yeah. Let's see. Let me put my glasses on, Janet, and everybody. I can't stop recording, so this is reality. Let's see. Let's try this again. That was pretty interesting. Add.
Yeah, I was just waiting for the punchline.
Yeah, it was just getting good.
What?
The edge of our seats.
What? Here we go. Oh, he's going to say he got abducted by aliens, and he really did. He's gone now. So,
A truth is stranger than fiction.
fiction.
Let's see. Okay. Janet, let's see. Let me write his number down because I can see it, but once this is crazy.
Yeah, write it down.
And the conjunction.
Just do it. Just do it. Just do it.
Okay, let's see. All right.
We should play some music right now. Where's our music?
Yeah.
Hey, while you're doing that, I'm going to see if I can get off my cell phone and join the call on my PC. So if I lose, I won't lose you. Let me just do something right now. I'm trying this out. Okay.
It shows his number, but maybe he dropped off. Let's see. Let's try this, folks. 850, and I won't give you the rest of his number because he'll have to do that because I don't know how much of a public figure he wants to be. He has invite his call number.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Theresa? Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me? Theresa, can you hear me? Theresa, can you hear me?
Hello? Hello? Okay. Let's see. Hello? It says I'm recording. Okay, let me try one more time. Why is this not working? Man, Bret Lueder. Okay, share group via link. No, he's on his phone right now. I don't want to do that. Okay, these machines are smarter than us. 2 group members. No, because let's see, 1580 588. Maybe I have to. Why am I seeing Japanese numbers, or is that Chinese? Can you hear me?
Yeah, hold on. Can you hear me? Hello? Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Hello.
Hello?
Hello. I'm back. I thought I was back.
Hello?
Hello. 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 Hello.
Okay, I'm back. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Janet.
Okay, now where's Theresa?
I have no idea. Is she even on Earth?
I don't see, I mean, I see her picture. And
Are
she's
you here?
recording the call. Yeah, we're all here
Teresa, is
now.
that you?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, we're all
Okay.
together again.
Okay, let's
Yay.
continue. Now you
Stay
were
on the
going
planet.
down the road,
Be mindful.
and
Stay on
you
the
were going to
planet.
go to the bathroom. You were going to go to the bathroom. Then what happened?
I know we got cut off right at the best part. I was going to the bathroom.
That was so exciting.
So okay, so
Okay,
It's
now.
my comedy relief. Brett, I'm
to
not
pick up.
so with. I think you're half alien or ET or something. All right. Well,
I'll
I
stay
think
open
it's
to that. I don't know. But okay, so to pick up where we left off,
please.
I just went out to the back of my S10 Blazer, my little 1983 Chevy S10 Blazer,
I'm
to
laughing.
go to the bathroom. And as I'm relieving myself, I start to notice, it's a beautiful dark sky out, stars everywhere, right? And all of a sudden, this one star starts doing circles. And I'm like, wow, that's kind of weird. And it started, I've always compared it over the years to the tip of a pencil when you're scribbling up and down. It would go in circles back and forth, and then it would go up and down like a scribble. And it was kind of jumping all over the place. I later would read Bill Hamilton's book, UFO Magic, where he talked about jumpers. And anyway, so it didn't click with me right away. I just thought, wow, that's kind of cool. You know, that must be one of those UFO things I've heard so much about. And then all of a sudden it hit me. Oh my God, I'm in the middle of nowhere. I don't want to be abducted. So I speedily, I think I peed on myself. I got back in my car and I headed back out Road 14 to 505, went on the on-ramp, headed back north to I-5. And when 505 hits I-5 in the northbound, there's an overpass. And so you get lifted up above all the skyline there, because there's no skyscrapers, it's just ranches and trees. So it lifts you up above that, and I could see this light. This light was following me up the valley, and I could see it was closer to me because I could see the silhouette of the Mendocino Range in the dark behind this thing, and it was low. And so I was like, oh, wow, what's going on? Oh, my God, I'm in trouble, blah, blah, blah. All these things are shooting through my mind. And I drove up a little further to a rest stop in Artois, tiny little town in the middle of nowhere, especially back then. And I pulled over, and there's a row of parking spaces that face the freeway that are at an angle. You know, you've seen those angled parking spaces. And so I pulled into one facing the freeway and was going like, oh my God, I got to tell somebody, this is just too weird. I've heard about stuff like this. And as I'm rolling through my mind, what's going on? What did I get myself into? Does this have anything to do with my trip on Vandenberg 3 or 4 days before? And as I'm mulling these things over, I look just slightly to my left, perpendicular to the highway, say across the highway to the southbound lanes where they had another rest stop. And so as I'm looking at that rest stop, it was kind of a windy night, and the leaves just parted, and there's this big light just kind of like waiting for me. At least that's how I felt about it at the time, right? Now, mind you, the lights that are in the rest stops are the low energy lights. They're yellow. So for this light to be down within the level of the eucalyptus trees, maybe it was a street light in the far distance somewhere. I'll stay open to that, right? Because I don't know for sure. Mm-hmm. But the feeling I got was it was this craft, this light that I saw dancing around 10 or 15 minutes before. I thought it was it. So I'm like, oh my God, I got to go to my one friend John's house. So I gathered myself together, got back on the freeway, and this thing was paralleling me up the freeway. How far away was it from me? Well, if the Mendocino Range is, I'd say 3 to 5 miles from I-5 right there, it was within a mile, I would say, just a guess, paralleling me up the freeway. So as I got to Highway 45, I got off on Highway 45 because I knew that was how I get to my friend's ranch. And where his ranch was, there wasn't an on-ramp or off-ramp. So I had to get off on this earlier off-ramp, go up Highway 45 to Bayless Blue Gum Road. And so I was supposed to cross over Bayless Blue Gum Road and be able to get to my friend's house. And I rolled into a fog bank, and I never found my friend's house. So the next thought that I had was that I was almost out of gas, and I needed to make it back to Chico before I ran out of gas. So over the years, I've explained this story. I've told the story to people, and several people have offered theories, and the leading theory is that I got abducted that night. I don't know that I got abducted that night. I'll stay open to that. But when people see how passionate I am about studying UFOs and other kinds of paranormal events, many people have said to me, well, it's because you're abducted. People usually don't get interested in that kind of thing until you're abducted. Now, I've had a history of it. So I'm not sure that necessarily applies to me, but I'll stay open to that. I definitely don't remember how I got out of gas so quickly, you know?
Think about this radio show.
Go ahead.
When you listen back.
When you're talking, it's a delay before we can hear you. So all I heard was giggling in the background. So just realize there's a delay. So go ahead, TJ, ask your question, and then I have a question. Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead, TJ.
Or respond.
I was saying, think about this radio show, because Janet and I have been doing radios since 2012 together. And I was too ET to go on radio shows because I was scared I'd be killed. And so I only went on Kevin Smith's, and he was killed. And then helped Dirk Vanderploeg in 2007.
And he's dead.
And he's dead. So no
really?
comment.
Vanderploeg's dead?
Yeah, I can verify that you're probably not dead, but I think you've been abducted.
I remember that name from my UFO magazine days. Yeah. Dirk Vanderploeg.
Yes. He's
right.
Dead.
I never met him, but I remember he was a columnist back at UFO magazine back when I used to write for UFO magazine. So anyway, that was really my.
Let me add to that before you go. Let me add to that before you go to the next thing. I think that you probably have been abducted since you were a little boy, and that's not come to light yet, because usually when you're abducted, it usually starts early. Who was that? The guy from Australia, what's his name? George Kapasilis. He and I have had long discussions on the radio and in person. And basically, the theory is that they abduct everybody on Earth, and they're looking for certain qualifiers, and then they decide after a certain point to continue to contact when you're an adult. Because I guess they're looking for certain genetic things, or maybe intelligence. We're not sure what they're looking for. But his theory is that everybody on the planet has been taken, and they take everybody periodically all throughout childhood, and then they decide which ones are there. I don't know, maybe you're an ambassador because you have a really strong interest and you end up writing books about it. So I think with the level of interest that you're describing and the excitement about it, that you were one of the good candidates when you were young, and that's why they continue, and they probably continue to this day. But it's not always going to let you remember.
Bret, think about the book I wrote that you didn't even know I wrote. And I knew Dirk because I was writing for him, and he left UFO News Magazine, but I know them too. So I know everybody pretty much everybody that you've talked about in the past that were authors or did videos. And he went over to UK. He wrote a book too. So you can find it on Amazon, folks. And so we're all authors. So I started the Authors Club organization as ACO way back with Dirk Vanderploeg. And I already had the UFO Association. So he asked me to extend it to Stanton T. Friedman and George Filer. So I talked to both of them. Now, before that, you need to know that I worked and was meeting with J. Allen Hynek, but I didn't know he was going to die either. So I'm keeping up the flame and the story of the UFO biz as best I can if people would stay alive. But, Harold died too. So anyway, I will Skype, but there's a whole lot
Harold?
of... Oh, God, that's his story. That's part of his... I don't know if he's gotten it. Let's go back to P. Let's go back to the abduction, because you literally were abducted. You'll have to go back and listen to this. But it can happen, folks, and you can be taken up in human form, because I've done it. You can be taken up in lucid dreaming. You can be taken up in astral plane. And I wrote the book called Knowing Cosmology, Ascension Age. So I've got a whole bunch of other books out there dealing with all this stuff. Nobody's known it because I was scared to let people know, because everybody's dying, consider my husband. So Bret's going to try to hold the energy to keep one show weekly on what he's talking about. We're hoping Bret will do it. And
I think I might just hang up just so I could stay alive.
Well, I'm still here.
Sounds like there's a pattern, TJ.
TJ, there's a pattern. Let's go ahead, Bret. Continue.
No comment.
So what happened next? What happened next?
I'm teasing. Okay, so to come full circle, you know, that I look back on that event that night on Highway 505, and then rolling into the UFO, roll into the fog, right? Maybe I just made a Freudian slip subconsciously. Maybe I rolled into the UFO. I don't know, but that was my initiation into this. I've had a that really brought up my old memories of sci-fi and Star Trek, and you know, the Shirley MacLaine movie, Legend of the Bogey Creek. That was another one that I remember from my youth, about that scary Bigfoot guy in Oklahoma. And so after college, I switched from being a business major. I have to look. It was either before or after this event. I'd have to look at my notes, but at some point I switched from being a business major to public relations, which is in journalism. And so I took all those classes and public relations and how to write in different styles and forms and that kind of thing, and communicate to different target groups, that kind of thing, how to tailor make your messages, all that communication stuff. And I actually met E.L. Bernays, shook his hand in Sylvester's Cafe on Chico State campus. One of my best buddies at the time, his mom was E.L. Bernays' secretary on the East Coast. So for those who don't know the history of public relations, E.L. Bernays wrote, I think it was called The Consent of Opinion. And he was the guy that's famous for getting women to smoke during World War II as a motivation to get them in the factories making bombs, that kind of thing. So he's one of the guys that's credited with the invention of public relations.
Are you
along
saying
with Robert.
he invented did he invent Virginia Slims for women, or how cigars or cigarettes? Or I'm not big on smoking because I don't smoke, but most of the men in my life and my mother smoked, and some spiritual warriors do smoke until they graduate. But Tom smoked even off planet. He smoked in space, Janet. They didn't even smoke, you know, in space.
That's old school right there.
Yeah.
How did he get cigarettes in space?
They can make anything.
Great question.
No, they can make anything. Everything.
How do you light it in your ship if it's full of oxygen?
It's not like we think here. Everything we know is sort of wrong because we only believe in three-dimensional products and services. What we can, you know, tangible and intangible. But if you listen to the new people in biology, physics, physicists, and where we're going in all the dimensions, besides 12, we're recreating the 13th, which you know about with circles of 12 plus, you know, we'll say the oracle. So I wrote the story of my lives as Atlantis Oracle. It's about 29 minutes. I made a short version to put on YouTube. So right now we're creating everything in YouTube, but we're the creators. But I'll get into that once you get down the road in cosmology and ascension age with your public relations. I'm working in the same area as you are. I'm a communications officer on planet. So here on this planet, I'm doing my best to do public relations work in all the universes because there's a war going on in space, and not to mention mythology. So, but it's important that each person learn who they are in physical form, and then they come down and become a biological. But right now we've had a lot of souls leave with Harold during the conjunction right before, and a lot of people.
Wait, who's Harold? You're introducing a
later
new
on in the
person
story,
and we don't know who Harold is. You have to tell people which characters. Who's Harold?
Do you want me to say who Harold is?
No, you
yes,
please.
Get there.
No, it's too soon.
I want to know who Harold is.
It's too soon. Wait, it's on his timeline. Keep going on your timeline.
Okay.
Let's shut up and let him do his timeline. We'll be here for 5 hours. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, just so Janet can have a little of appeasement, Harold is a former teacher of mine that just recently passed.
Okay.
So she happened to, TJ and Harold actually knew each other for years before I ever knew TJ. So just kind of a weird little thing. So anyway, there's more to it, but we can talk on a different time about that. So
okay.
So it was in college. I forgot where I left off, but I can just pick up right here. I was writing for this paper up here in Chico called Hump Magazine. And it was published by a friend of mine named DNA. He now does stand-up comedy in Santa Cruz. Great guy, multi-talented, super huge inspiration for me in my early years especially. And like he introduced me to the book Your Church Doesn't Want You to Read. A great friggin' book, bright red cover. And I read my first Jordan Maxwell in that book, right? I got David Icke's The Biggest Secret, and the Truth Shall, no, wait, what was the Robots Rebellion? That was the early David Icke one he had. This guy DNA turned me on to Zechariah Sitchin. Anyway, this guy DNA, oh shoot, I sidetracked myself. Where was I? Was either of you listening?
Yeah, but did you say DNA? You're telling us about this guy that introduced you a bunch of books and stuff and esoteric
DNA. Yeah, his name is DNA.
Like dinucleic, let's say DNA. Say it, not dinucleic acid, I've forgotten, but we have 46, 23 chromosomes.
The guys.
Is that his name? He's a DNA person?
Yeah, that's his initials.
Oh, that's his.
But he just goes.
Remember talking to extraterrestrial on many levels.
He goes by DNA. That's his shtick.
Wasn't it diribonucleic acid first, though? But that's his initials.
Yeah, of course. DNA was discovered, I think, in the 40s or 50s, something like that.
Okay, so he's a human that was created with DNA. He's a biological.
No, it's just his initials.
Is
for his sake, hopefully he's got DNA, right?
I told you you're comedy relief. Well, comedy cuts through all the dimensions, Gene. Just so you know, it's like a radio or a microwave, and I can't do it. And one of my jobs here is with emotions, because down here we get to use our senses and emotions in a physical and a biological. So Bret is a baby in my world. So it's been fun with me and Harold, because Harold had a caregiver, but Bret, he was teaching Bret all along. And now Bret wants to know what I know that Harold knew. And he called me today about it. That's how I wound up on the radio show and then being abducted in the radio wave. So folks, you are what you believe, I guess, or receive. So you're doing a pretty good job, Bret. I like your story, but I don't know what year we're in. I think you're in college, but of course I'm listening intently.
Okay. No, I remember now. I remember now. So DNA, shoot, I just had it. DNA. Okay, shoot, I forget. TJ, you cover so many.
Bret,
cover so many subjects in one sentence, TJ. I have to really focus when I'm on with you. So, okay, when I was in college, I was talking about DNA. What else? Oh, here it is. There we go. I got it. So he wrote this magazine called Hump, which I used to write for. And it was called Hump because he said the world was so screwed up during the Clinton era that we might as well just all hump, right? So he called the magazine Hump. And he would tackle some really crazy subjects. And he got a news release from the Bay Area UFO Expo, Victoria Jack's former UFO event that she had for, at least 10 years. And he said, hey, Bret, how would you like to go down and cover this for Hump Magazine? I'll get you free tickets. And I was like, man, you don't have to twist my arm. So I went down there with some buddies, got to meet Victoria Jack, saw Jordan Maxwell speak for the first time. Met a guy from Hawaii named Peter Phelan, who told me all about the dolphins and the different dimensions. And Whitley Strieber, I think, was there, if I remember correctly. And
did you cite the year for this recording? What? For the record on your timeline, would you briefly recite the year on your timeline for that? Because that sounds important.
I forget if I was at the first or second Bay Area UFO Expo, but I'm pretty sure it was 1999. Okay? And so that was my first Bay Area UFO Expo. I went to all 10 or 11 or 12 of them. Let's see, when did she end it? I forget if she started in 98 or 99.
We know that because Janet met Lorian.
Well, and I went to No, I did not meet Lorian at that.
You met Lorian
Yeah,
on
Lorian came in the picture way later.
All right. Well,
Lorian,
I asked Brett Janet to look up Lorian on line, and she brought her on my show. We have a record of when Lorian entered the picture on my show.
I didn't even know about her till 2010, and then I didn't actually meet her till 2012. So.
Well, I knew about her before she became a speaker on Revolution Radio.
TJ.
Okay. Well, anyway.
Go back to your line.
I go back to
Yeah. So I started going. So Victoria Jack ran the Bay Area UFO Expo.
12 of them as well. I went to all 12 of them as well, so I was trying to help you with the timeline. So I think that started in 97 or 98. So I became friends with David Icke because of that. And so I was the one, Victoria and David had a fight or something, and then I was the one that got them back together. So I think the last one, David Icke was there, right? And then it was it. That was the last one. And that was somewhere there in, losing timeline. Because then I went to IUFO Congress because Victoria, I used to go to that one every year. So we may have met at there. But anyway, go ahead. So you went to all the conferences, and what happened next?
Yeah, well, so I it's curious. I forget what article I wound up writing for DNA. I wrote several, but the point I was going to make was that I really sprouted my antlers going to that expo every year and doing, I'm a journalist, right? So I went with a camera. Sometimes I had a film crew with me. I was able to pull that off a couple years, but I started interviewing guys and just jumping in feet first. And I created my first DVD, Esoteric Guide to the Bay Area UFO Expo. That I think I produced that one, 2006. I had Jordan Maxwell in there, John Rhodes, Dean Haglund from the X-Files was in there, Stanton Friedman, Peter Robbins from Left at Eastgate, David Sereda, I think, was in there, Nick Begich. Anyway, huge for me to get to talk to all these people. James Gilliland was in there, and so I produced 2 of them so far. I went the next year, produced in 2007, and I've still got a 3-disc set that hasn't been produced from 2008, and a 4-disc set from 2009. I'm probably going to combine 2009 that I just haven't had the time to get to or the funds to pay the right person to do it. But that's how it started for me. I started going down there interviewing people, and then I'd meet contactees who would say, well, you definitely are a contactee, otherwise you wouldn't be this interested in it. I began hearing that, at least once a year, every time I'd go down for the weekend. And people kept suggesting that I was going to write a book. And so I didn't really think it at the time, excuse me, but I began to, maybe because people kept telling me, you tell a man he's a certain thing often enough and he'll become it, So I think I had enough people say that I was going to be an author, so I wrote a book about reggae music and conspiracy theory and UFOs and consciousness and magic and how that all ties together. And I'm writing book 2 right now. It's called Tales of a Heavy Heart, UFOs, Magic, and Impending Doom. It's way late getting out, but it's volume 2 in my Esoteric Guide to the Reggae Vibe trilogy. The first book, of course, you mentioned earlier, I think it was Janet, you mentioned earlier, it's called Song in Your Heart, the story of the search for the lost note. And so I'm writing that follow-up now, finally. And I'm also writing another book now called, let me back up. So the second book I wrote then was called A UFO Hunter's Guide. And that's when I met you, TJ, in 2012. And if we didn't meet earlier, Janet, that's when I met you as well. I think, although it's
Lorian's event, and I'm not sure which one it was.
Yeah, so I think I was just about to say, I think it was Lorian that introduced me to both of you.
Yes.
And so there was some good to come out of that relationship. But I wrote the UFO Hunter's Guide for Wiser Books in San Francisco for a big time publisher. and they really didn't pay me very well. And I think they kind of misled me a little bit about royalties. But they put me on like a 3-month radio and speaking tour. And so I got to get out I went to Sacramento MUFON and LA MUFON and Orange County MUFON and back up into Sonoma. And I was on Coast to Coast and a whole bunch of shows on CBS radio, a whole bunch of stuff. And so that's really how I sprouted some antlers. I spoke, actually, excuse me. After going to the UFO Expo for 5 or 6 years, I became friends with Vicki Jack, her son Richard Jack, and all the volunteers that would come to the expo and help out are still some of my best friends today. And even though, like you were saying earlier, some of them have passed already. So I was really lucky to get to know some of those people. But over the years, Vicki said, she'd hear me at the Sunday night party and she'd be like, "You need to be a speaker." And I'd be like, "Well, okay." So next year, after that year, I think it was 2007, she said, "Bret, you got to speak next year." So I said, okay. I had a whole year to prepare. I was really ready to go. I did okay first time out. I didn't do bad. I did okay. But I was in. All of a sudden, I was a speaker. I had a DVD out of interviews with other speakers. And I was planning the first book. And so when I went to go write my first book, I was studying with a Druid priestess teacher named Serona Knight. And she's at that time, she'd written 20-something books. I think she's over 40 books now about Druidism and Wiccanism and witchcraft and all that stuff, Celtic history, stuff like that. Dream Magic, I think, may be her biggest book. That was for like one of the big publishers. I forget the name of it right now, but she was encouraging me to write a book. So I wrote the first book with what I knew. It was music, because I was a music writer in Chico. I wrote for all the big papers in Chico, and I was into UFOs and the paranormal. So I was able to find an angle with what are known as roots reggae musicians, like Bob Marley is the most famous roots reggae musician. And so there's regular reggae musicians that play pop music, but then there's the roots guys that play the skank, the hard that it'll have that either with a keyboard or guitar in it. That's called the skank. And Bob Marley and Jimmy Cliff and Burning Spear and others made that famous back in the late 60s, early 70s. And it turns out what they're singing about is this whole conspiracy thing that we in the West, on the fringe of Western society, who study this, what's called conspiracy theories, they're singing about it. Their whole culture, the Rastafarian culture, uses reggae music to, instead of they don't write a bunch of books like we do here in the West, they write songs. And they're like preachers, and they go out and sing about this. And so I was fascinated by why they do that, how that came about, and how that's connected into conspiracy stuff that we're studying in the West. And so what I found was that there was a huge connection between UFOs, music, and indigenous cultures. And there's a whole list of things I could say, add to that. But that, there might be people out there going, well, I've known that for years. Well, at that time, that blew me out of the water. Man, I didn't think anything like that was possible. So I started following that thread, and that became the first book, Song in Your Heart, Story of the Search for the Lost Note, and that was released in 2008. And then it was because I knew Vicki. Wiser Books approached Vicki and asked her if she knew anyone that would write a UFO book for them. So I was lucky number 3. She asked Ruben Uriarte first, and he said he was busy. And if I remember correctly, she asked John Rhodes to do it second. And, John Rhodes is where David Icke got his original reptilian information, for those who don't know. John Rhodes said no, he was writing his own book, which hopefully is going to come out soon, because I know he was told that he wasn't supposed to release it, and so he was waiting. And last time I saw John Rhodes at Contact in the Desert, I think it was 2016, he was there with Rosemary Ellen Guiley, and she was helping him write the book. But Rosemary Ellen Guiley has since passed away, so I'm not sure what's happened there. I need to touch bases with John Rhodes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's a really good man. He's going to write, I can't say the title of his book because I don't have permission to say it, but he's going to write the definitive reptilian book, hopefully sometime soon. Okay, so back to my story.
Rosemary. What happened to Rosemary, real quick? What happened?
I don't know the details. I just know she passed. I don't think it was anything nefarious necessarily. I think, she was in her 70s at least.
Okay.
So,
I didn't know she was that old. Okay.
Yeah, so
go ahead.
Yeah, so Vicky asked John if he'd do it, and he said he was busy. So it fell on me. And so here I was itching to write a book anyway. Part of my excuse for not writing my volume 2, the follow-up to Song in Your Heart, was that I got this gig with Weiser to write a UFO Hunter's Guide. And so while there's hundreds of UFO books out there of all shapes and sizes, all thicknesses and varieties from different angles, I decided on writing a book that was more of an informative guide to beginners. And at the same time, I was able to add a lot of top-level information that a lot of people don't get to until they study for years. Like me, for example, it took me a lot of years to add to the stuff that's in that book. And while there are a lot of great books out there, the late, great Hilly Rose, in an interview on Fate magazine, or Fate Radio, the old Fate magazine with Phyllis Galde,
right,
he said,
I know Phyllis,
Yeah, we know
he
Phyllis.
called it, I've met her on the phone. I haven't actually met her in person, but I didn't have the right kind of articles for her at the time for Fate.
Yeah, she used to send me and Janet Fate magazines for the events. She's been on a lot of television shows, but she's one of the old souls. She and I are real bonded as producers and book author publishers. She bought Fate from Llewellyn up there in Minnesota, right?
I was just going to say Llewellyn, right. I knew Llewellyn was connected in there.
Yeah, I love Llewellyn, but keep going because...
So anyway, so Hilly Rose, God bless him, he called it one of the greatest UFO books ever written. And I was pretty floored by that, right? He used to fill in for Art Bell, among other places, right? So that's the second book. I'm very proud of both books. But so right now I'm writing the follow-up to Song in Your Heart. It's called Tales of a Heavy Heart, UFOs, Magic, and Impending Doom. And it's about, I'm going to do 3 parts. The first part's going to be about my experience with the feminine energy, coming into awareness of it, how I incorporate that into my masculinity, I had homophobia at one point. I didn't want to be too effeminate, right? Because I was a jock and I wanted to fit in. And so I had to incorporate and learn about all these things about myself and the feminine. What a better opposite for me to teach me certain lessons. Let me tell you that.
Well, you were very good looking, right? I don't know if you still are, but I've never seen you human.
Not really.
But
off planet, I'm too hairy to be good looking.
But you were also one of the keepers of the Yeti, right? The Akashic Field in Tibet.
Yeah.
Didn't you have? Did you do any studies because I know you're going to a mountain soon to be initiated for taking our Ascension Center place and of the 12 skulls. But when you get initiated, ask them about that part of you. That's a real beautiful part of you. Okay. And also Brad, right? Because you're friends with Brad. All right, well, let's stay on your timeline, but when you say something, it's hard not to expand it. So I guess we'll do a lot more radio shows. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you can expand on whatever you want. That's totally fine. So where was I again? I'm writing the follow-up, my volume 2 of my esoteric guide to the Reggae Vibe trilogy is called Tales of a Heavy Heart, UFOs, Magic, and Impending Doom. In part 1, I'm going to write about how the feminine energy has, what it's been like in my experience, how it's helped me to learn and grow, to learn about myself, to improve myself, to do all those kind of things, to heal, be nurtured, how to love, those kinds of things. I'm still learning some of those things. And so that's part 1. Part 2 is going to be all about the law. and our friend Harold is going to be in that part because he is one of three. He's actually the guy that founded the law study group that I studied from in Chico. It's called the Big Ear Salmon Club. I'm just about to post an interview I did with Harold and Phil Lang when I stayed with Harold for 6 months in Chico at his mobile home. And we had such a great time, right? I thought I better get some stuff on tape. So I videotaped Harold, and we're going to be talking about the origins of the Big Ear Salmon Club. It's a great story. If anyone out there follows my Facebook posts, I just did a eulogy for one of the other founders, Jim Mullen, and he's a legendary figure. He's been written up in the New York Times twice. The IRS chased him for 30 years before they could get him in court. Jim Mullen's just a legend, right? And so it's no coincidence that Jim Mullen and Harold Bauman founded this law study group, of course, with Bill Baker as well, who's since passed. So the second book.
Hello.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay.
Are you okay?
So the second book is the part 2 of the second book, Tales of a Heavy Heart, is going to be all about the law and my dealings with the law and how the law is really another system of magic and how that magic has subjugated our country and most of the modern countries in the world through a thing called banking and that the use of the all caps name and how that's like a somewhat of a voodoo doll. And so when the powers that be interact with that all caps name and you agree that that's you, they have their magical power over you. And so I'm going to do 8 chapters on that kind of thing. Harold is really the foundation of that.
You know, Harold knows that my birth certificate, I can send you a copy, is not all caps.
Right. At a certain point, yeah, that's the older school ones. You're right. It still meant the same thing because the Birth Certificate Act was 1913, I think it was, 1914 maybe.
Whether you had to have one in America?
That whole process really started in 1868 and through a series of acts culminated in 1933 with the public policy HJR 192. That's House Joint Resolution 192, where they legally removed the gold. Excuse me. And so that's we don't need to go off on that subject right now necessarily, but that's a huge event. Of course, 2 years later, they did the Emergency Banking Relief Act, which was just a follow-up to the Trading with the Enemy Act from 1917, and that basically subjugated us as debt slaves, a new modern form of slavery. So I'm going to be talking about that and the spiritual ramifications of that, how the Rastas and their particular stances politically and spiritually, how that plays into all this, because all these are world events and they all relate. So Haile Selassie, who the Rastafaris think was the second coming of Christ, he was the emperor of Ethiopia from, the 20s maybe, into I think he was jailed or deposed in 68 and then died a few years after that. Some people think he's not dead, which that'll be a whole nother book. There's a certain monk in a reclusive what do you call a temple out in the wilderness in Ethiopia that people say that that's really Selassie. Anyway, I'm going to follow up on that in a different book, but all these things all relate to each other, and so that's part 2. Part 1's the feminine, part 2's the law. Part 3, I'm just going to pour out my cup of all the most strange things that have happened to me and the work that I've done to try to figure out what those things are. I described to you my possible abduction earlier. That's one of them. I've had Bigfoot experiences. I've had all kinds of UFO sightings. I've had evil beings come through other people and attack me in various ways, physically and spiritually. So I'm going to it's going to be UFOs and aliens and crop circles and demons and Zechariah Sitchin stuff and you name it. It's all going to be in part 3. And, we'll probably culminate in some time travel stuff. I've done a few interviews with Andrew Basiago, and I actually hired him to be an attorney for me to represent me for a traffic ticket in Washington. where they've broken all kinds of laws and they're not going by the Supreme Court and all kinds of stuff, right? And this is in every state in the union. So it's funny how it always gets back to the law, but Andrew and I had a falling out because when I suggested in one of my articles that was going to promote his presidency, I suggested that Project Pegasus wasn't going into the future and seeing who the presidents were, and then coming back to the present and finding those small boys, those young boys, and then bringing them into the program to groom them for the presidency. They were doing the opposite. They were actually placing presidents in power. And when I suggested that, and I didn't think it was that harmful of a thing, he got really upset, and our what I thought was a friendship kind of faded away, and he stopped doing Skypes with me on video. And then after I sent him 15 different ways to beat my ticket, he tried to tell me I had no case. So I'm probably going to be ending that second part with of the law with that story of Andy Bashag. I wrote a huge article about it in Phenomena magazine back in 2016, I think. It was a big two-parter, and so that's going to lead into this third part where I have a story that involves the law and time travel. So I think that's a good segue into the paranormal. And so that's going to be Tales of a Heavy Heart, UFOs, Magic, and Impending Doom. So the other book I'm writing right now, and I just started it about a month ago, is based on one of my most popular lectures called UFOs in the Inner Earth. And in that lecture, I first broke out the theory at one of Lorien Fenton's conferences in 2013, and that's chronicled in a DVD called UFOs and the Global Struggle for the Control of Human Consciousness. And so since then, I've reworked that and other information into a lecture called UFOs and the Inner Earth. And what's the connection between UFOs and the Inner Earth? And so it took me a few years to go through all that kind of material, to search for that kind of material. And part of that research was researching Inner Earth stories, Hollow Earth stories, underground and government alien, underground base stories. And then synthesizing all the material. And man, I've read hundreds of magazine articles and books and watched videos and interviewed. I've done probably 30 different interviews with people that have different perspectives on the Inner Earth as one part of our conversation or another, even if it wasn't all about the Inner Earth. And then also, too, I interviewed Brooks Agnew in 2007, which is part of my Esoteric Guide to the Bay Area UFO Expo Volume 2. And that really blew me out of the water. And so what I realized was that what I was being shown was that there's a repeat of information within Inner Earth stories that has been repeating itself for thousands of years. And so I started thinking to myself, and when I really had the moment of clarity, it was at the same time I was like kicking myself going, why didn't I see this sooner? I'm a public relations major. Why didn't I see this sooner? But I thought my moment of clarity was that, wow, when information is repeated over and over and over, that's usually in an advertising campaign or, and I'm thinking this to myself, a public relations campaign. Oh my God. Mm-hmm. Here it was, the moment of clarity. The Inner Earth people have perpetrated a formal public relations campaign upon the surface dwellers for the purposes of ascension. At least that's my information. I know there's a lot of darkness down under there. We can talk about that. But I when I was writing for UFO magazine,
you talked to the guy who came up from the Inner Earth. What's his name? Billy something. He said he is an Inner Earther, and he was in the military because they found him and they recruited him, and because they knew they discovered who he was before he knew. Billy something. If you're
is that the guy that made him into a colonel so he could get the clearance level to go down below?
Yes. Did you talk to him?
I haven't talked to him, but I watched all those videos. Pretty dang interesting, let me tell you. I know who you're talking about.
He's fascinating. Yeah.
he
Yeah.
channels Zora or something like that, I think. Anyway,
Well, yeah, that's something to do with his father. His father is an inner earther, and so he was taken to the underground. It's not a train, but it's a transportation system that goes around the planet underneath the earth. And then he was he met his father. His mind wiped. You know, he came up here to go to get raised amongst the humans and to go through our educational system. So you're right. You're right on. They have a program to try to get us. So used to the
I
idea,
thought
but
he,
anyway,
okay.
I thought he
Well, so
passed it.
what I did,
go ahead.
A lady
so what I did was I flushed this out to a certain level, and I realized that there was 9 revelations that became clear to me of how this was true. And so I wrote the article for Phenomena Magazine. It was a 2-part article called "I'm a PR Agent for the Inner Earth People" and Other Fascinating Revelations. And I think that was in, I think I'll have to go look on my bio, but it was in 2017, I believe. It might be April and May. I have to go back and look, but I wrote a big 2-part article called "I'm a PR Agent for the Inner Earth People!" exclamation point. Like it totally blew me away, right? And so I wrote about these 9 revelations that indicate that this might be true. And I went and I interviewed Diane Robbins. Matter of fact, let me just back up a little bit. I met Diane Robbins in 2009 because the UFO magazine sent me up to Mount Shasta on assignment to go interview her. And so that article never got published in UFO magazine because they wound up tanking after that, like in 2010 or 11, before I could get the article written. And so it wound up appearing in Phenomena Magazine online. That's phenomenamagazine.co.uk, in case anyone's interested. But
Now, who is Diane Robbins? I'm not familiar.
Okay, I'll get to that. Good question. So Diane Robbins was the ambassador. She is the ambassador to Telos.
Oh, okay.
So Telos is the legendary, or maybe as TJ might put it, the mythological city that is beneath Mount Shasta, that is supposedly housed by 20 to 30,000-year-old beings that have all ascended, and they're survivors from when the continent of Lemuria sank. You know, and the timelines are different on when that sank. But I think if I remember correctly, through Diane Robbins, it was like 40 or 50,000 years ago. I know there's other timelines, so I'm not really sure what to make of the different timelines. But supposedly, Diane Robbins channels this being called Adama, who is considered to be the high priest of this city called Telos.
Can I throw a wrench into that? Can I throw a wrench into this?
Yeah, you don't have to ask.
No, a wrench, no wrenches. Now go ahead.
Well,
what do you want to say, TJ?
All right. Well, I don't think I know. I can't say I think I know because of his friend Phil Lang. Phil Lang will want me to talk through my heart about this because of Drumbelow and his study, one of his, but regarding all of that, there's a whole nother storyline besides channel Diane Robbins. So just keep that in mind when you do that story, because she's very well known, Janet, since you didn't know who she was. But she's just one of many channels. Yeah, one of her friends came on our show, Janet, and then one of those. Now, I need to ask this real quick. Didn't that gentleman pass? The Claire Prophet's husband, but Diane Robbins, you can ask her what she gets as a channel, but I work with all those levels too. And the wrench is that Lemuria was all at one time Pangea. And that was, we got to get the story straight because it's been all twisted in mythology. But since I was an original soul in Atlantis and Lemuria, which you can verify in reality, Bret, for your book. Look up the 29-minute Atlantis Oracle, which Janet had, but she didn't know any of the stories exactly or how she fit in. And I've been PRing her since 2012. She's in a lot of my trailers too. So when you start writing all that, make sure you get all the different people that have books and videos and music. I've got the music for all that too. So it's already out there open source, so you can use it, Bret, in your book. I give you permission.
Okay.
To quote,
Okay.
you didn't know
So-
I was a musician, and you didn't know I was a writer, and you didn't know I was a channel, and you didn't know I was an old soul, and you didn't know I was death and dying. And Janet, he didn't even know I was an author. So it's so funny, and people need to realize that you can wear many hats and be many people and be cloned in various dimensions. So what's happened is, after the conjunction, Janet prepared everybody for our new reality. But on her show that Bret hasn't heard, but see, Bret has to do research. He has no clue who I am. He didn't know I wrote 20 or 30 books. I don't even know, I lost count. He didn't know about, my Lulu account that I get checks for being an author. He didn't know about my Amazon. He didn't know about me being a member of IBMA and CMA and all that. So he hasn't really done his research or homework on me. But Bret, that's okay, because you were always a part of Herald. And that's mine and your key. And Harold was Navy, and Harold was a gatekeeper and a protector. And so I'm hoping that when you write about all this stuff, just remember that Diane Robbins and her people, there's a whole bunch of them. And there's a whole bunch of writers and a whole bunch of channels. So Janet,
I'm familiar with a few of them.
Okay, and I'm one of those. And I was all the way back with the hippies, they're called, in Kentucky. So with Carla and the Law of One. So there's a whole bunch of history that people don't know about because there was no witness to it. And I believe that's why you've been called to the future during the conjunction with me, because we go way, way, way back to Shambhala. You and I, Shambhala.
Okay.
And the Tibet
Okay.
Bigfoots.
Okay.
Yeti. Okay, back to you.
Janet, did you have a question?
No, I was just wanting to get back to the story.
Okay. So, yeah, I am familiar with other channels for Adama. There's Asara Adams is up in Mount Shasta. There's a lady named Aurelia. It seems like since I started writing this book a month ago, people have come out of the woodwork to give me information. And so I really feel like somebody's watching me up there right now. So I feel the pressure's on, let's just say. I don't take it lightly. And,
You mean
and
besides
so,
Harold?
I mean,
You
the what?
Besides Harold? Besides Harold?
Besides Harold what?
You said you felt like somebody was watching you from up there. So I said
Oh, yeah,
besides Harold.
Well, I mean, I started it before Harold passed. So Harold just passed like 7 or 8 days ago.
Well, go back to your story, because we haven't even figured out what year you lived with him. So you're right now with Diane Robbins. Go back to your authors, and I'm still back in
Okay.
Okay.
Stop doing little asides for a while. So let's get this story, because I can't be on all day. It's going on.
Right. Yeah, me either. Right. So long story short, Diane Robbins imparts to me the messages from Adama, the messages that Adama wants to get out to the world. And in short, those are that we are immortal, that we don't have to die, that us surface humans have relatives that are waiting for us to catch up to them so that they can come up to the surface, and supposedly we can all move forward into the fifth dimension, ascend, in other words, together. And supposedly individuals can do it, but if the whole planet's going to do it, all the people have to do it together with the planet. And supposedly that's the most ideal way to do it. So with leaving out a lot of detail, okay, I write this article for Phenomena Magazine with the 9 revelations of why this is true. One of them being, if this campaign has been going on for thousands of years, then you can't really say that it's perpetrated by a government, because what government has lasted for thousands of years? So maybe you could argue that it's a secret society. What?
Yeah, I can tell you that, but I can add to that, but go ahead. That's a good question. What government has lasted? I'll interject on that, but keep going.
Okay, so
Okay.
clearly it's not it's not a surface society that's behind it, because it's been going on for generations, way longer than a human lifespan. So my thought was, well, the gatekeepers of the information must be the people that the stories are about, and that they're regulating their own information in a controlled time release, which can only be explained by a formal public relations campaign. Or if you want to look at it as an advertising campaign, you can do that too. But when you realize that people that supposedly go there, the story is a lot of times they're not allowed to leave because they don't want secrets to get out to the outside world. Or people that do come back, they have relatively the same information. There's high technology, there's giants, there's immortality, there's UFOs, and other things, right? And when you see a repeat of, I'm going to have a list of 12 things in the book, and I'm going to go through different stories. I'm going to have a graph chart, which is going to compare the inner Earth stories. I've chosen 12 of them, and the 12 different traits. Some have more traits than the others. Some I call complete stories, where full details about culture come out, like their music and their language and holidays or different rituals or whatever, right? And so I decided to take this a step further. And I went back to my college textbooks. I'm one of those weird nerds that keeps their textbooks from college. And I went and pulled out my public relations books and saw what the structure of a public relations campaign looked like. And as soon as I saw it, I went, oh shit, pardon my French. I'm onto something here, because what I did was I made a rough poster of a PR campaign chart on the left, and then I started to fill in aspects of inner Earth stories, and I wound up filling up every category. And I thought, wow, that can't be a coincidence. This is a public relations campaign. We're being targeted for an inner Earth public relations campaign. So then I took it a step further, and I decided to throw up UFO history next to all the categories of the 3 phases of a public relations campaign. And guess what? Everything lined up, just like with the inner Earth. And so that tells me lots of things. Among them, that there at least some UFOs are from the inner Earth. And then I got to go in a bunch more, but I will go into a bunch more about that in the book. They may be from other places too, but definitely some of them are from the inner Earth. And so that's the book I'm writing right now. I'm going to set up UFOs. That's what I'm writing right now. Then I'm going to introduce the inner Earth stories. That'll be chapter 2. Then I'm going to talk about public relations and the malintent that's been behind the usage of that strategy at least since E.L. Bernays, quote unquote, invented it in the 1920s. And then from there, I'm going to show the charts, how they all line up. And then part 2 of the book, the last, say, chapters 5 to 9 or 10, are going to be about how you spot the public relations campaign from the different groups. I think the Greys have their own campaign. I think the Reptilians have their own campaign. I think Bigfoot has their own campaign. And I think there's Ascended Masters have their own campaign. If you want to go even further, God has its own campaign, right?
Yes.
So, and then interspersed through all this is the dark forces using their own public relations campaigns to mess up or throw a ratchet or wrench into the sprocket of the good people's PR campaigns. And so you have this battle for the control of human consciousness with the use of public relations campaigns. And I honestly don't know how the end of the book's going to go yet. I think I have to write the first part of it, and then it's going to come to me as I'm going. So in my lecture, I predict that the dark forces, to simplify greatly, right? I'll just use that term, dark forces. They're going to use their public relations campaign, and they're going to stage a first contact scenario. but it's not going to be the right people.
That's and what so,
yeah, so they're going to be testing us. The good forces really, I think, are sitting back and watching us and how we as a species, as a human species, no matter what shape we're in, if we're diminished by 12 strands of DNA or whatever the scenario is, whatever state we're in, we're being tested right now to see if we can move to the next level. Right. And if we can't handle...
It's a morality test. It's a morality test. They keep giving us a morality test, and we keep failing. And
Bret,
it's a morality test. Everything's a morality test. Wait, let me say a few things today before you interrupt, okay? Because Bret, you're really onto it, and it goes way back to the Anunnaki and to all the species that have been visiting here. So you're right. It's a public relations. It's active measures. It's manipulation, control. Anyway, there's a wonderful video called Active Measures, how the different governments use this divide and conquer. They keep us separate. Why? Because the humans, we were able to reproduce and breed so fast that there were so few of them. The Anunnaki, there were so few of them. But it goes even beyond the Anunnaki. But the Anunnaki are still in charge. Anyway, I'm getting tired. It's been a long day. But this is brilliant. It really is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good connecting of the dots. When I'm a little bit fresher, I'd love to go through this with you even in a deeper level. So this is all because you were a young abductee, and they woke you, and it sounds like they orchestrated your life so you would get this background, this education, where you can become an analyst and a reporter and an investigator.
Right.
So you're part of their public relations program to train you as their public relations agent.
Right. I have pondered that line of thought myself. I don't know what the truth is necessarily. I don't know if we're supposed to know exactly. I know I'd like to know. So until God comes down and whispers in my ear, or I have some other kind of experience with another being that says so, I'm moving forward because I think it feels right. So I'm gonna explore this vein, you know, and
well,
this whole COVID thing. Go ahead.
If you knew it all, you wouldn't be so driven to keep going. So it's like the Da Vinci Code, right? You had to keep. You're the investigative journalist, and you're in the middle of this modern Da Vinci Code, which involves all the above: the extraterrestrials, the interdimensionals, the inter-earthers, the ancient aliens, et cetera, and you're Bill Tompkins at the MUFON, who died 2 weeks later. He told me, he said, you must storyboard it. If you storyboard it, you're going to get the answer. You are storyboarding it, and you're connecting the dots, and you're going into the overview. You have to go outside of the matrix and look down at the box. So you're doing this. It's brilliant. I'm excited. This is the most exciting thing I've heard recently. You know, it's like, good job. No accident.
Thank you very much, Jen. I really appreciate that.
I'm hungry. Yeah. Okay, I'll pass the talking stick.
Okay. So
back to you.
Back to me? Okay. So that's basically where I'm at right now, is now that I've actually put let's say finger to keyboard to get this ball rolling, I've got I was telling Janet earlier, I had a dream where I went to a room thinking I was looking for a friend, maybe not coincidentally a contactee friend of mine. I thought I was at her house. And then I got invited into this real warm Christmas setting and surrounded by a bunch of kids and adults. And I kind of realized that I'd learned to be a lucid dreamer way back. And it came right back to me like riding a bike. And I realized I wasn't maybe not in the right place. So I asked this kid, what city am I in? Which is kind of a strange question. And he replied, August. So I took that to mean that I have an experience waiting for me up on the mountain in August, and so right now I'm organizing an ascent on the summit for August. So
when did you tell Janet about that, Bret?
Just now.
I think you meant that you were talking to TJ earlier about your dream.
No, didn't I say TJ? Did I say Janet? I meant TJ.
Yeah, we said Brad. Brad. So
okay, well, I meant TJ. Right.
That's okay. So, for some reason, Janet has been thought to be me to a lot of people in these events. I've never been to an event of a UFO nature. So it's funny that Ken Johnston thought I was Janet. And when he met Janet, then he thought I was Lorian, because Janet and Lorian had worked so much together. Isn't that funny? So Janet's beautiful. And you said, I'd like her to know that you're not only writing about people like me that are 5'11" and women, although I have a lot of male in my past lives, but Janet had a lot of, I guess, female, but she's 5'4". But please tell people real quickly, because we're both women.
I'm only 5'2".
Oh, you're only 5'2".
I'm only 5'2".
But explain to her a little bit about, because we've only got 25 minutes left if we're going to do a 2-hour show. But since you're on your timeline and you're writing a new book and putting different chapters, and you called me, you said I was very hard to get in touch with, but I'd like you to mention more about the word ascension, because my books were public relation work on the ascension and the UFOs with my husband, which was from the Allied Command at the galaxy level, but we worked for the Supreme Allied Command. And then they had to talk to people through a wormhole in another universe. So I brought out that 7 universes years ago, Bret, that I hope that you'll research that. But this world took it down in 2007, and the Catholic Church, I guess all the intelligence, we'll call it the alphabet soup people. But 2007 was a very powerful year, folks. And that's the year I came out for Dirk Van der Ploeg and Kevin Smith. And Dirk asked me to help him with the law of attraction and all those people. But I got asked to do a lot of projects that people don't know that I was involved. My name never came up. So, Bret, I find it funny that today, when you talked to me, you didn't even know anything about me. So what did you know? And then you knew Harold for years. So let Janet know about her small stature, my tall, the red giants, and the different dimensions and the different people in the dimensions and all that. But tell her what you know and I'll shut up.
I doubt that that's going to be true, but I'll keep going. Okay, I'm not exactly sure what you're asking right there. You want me to tell Janet about what?
Well, the whole conversation we had earlier about and Harold, and then Harold and the Ascension, how you became the protector for the prophets, and what you know about yourself. And you didn't even know, I don't know what you knew about me. Did you only know me through Janet or Lorian? I don't know. But I know that Lorian, when I looked her up, she was not with, she was going to be in the mutual thing, and she came on my radio show and never been on a radio show before. And she was nervous as heck, but I already knew about her through Mike Ringley. And she was going to be interviewed by a mad painter in like Lady Horse and all that, because it's a long history. But I'd like you to mention all that and bring it up to the present when you meet Janet and when you meet me. But Harold knew me and Phil knew me. Brad apparently knew me. Now put all those people, Harold, Brad, you, and Phil Lane together, please.
Okay. If that's possible, I'm not sure. But I met Harold. I met Harold at the Law Study Group in 2005 in Chico. And back then, man, we used to pack this house. It was called Freedom Hall, and there'd be 40, 45 people there every Tuesday or Wednesday night. And man, I just had my eyes open and ears open, and I got a just completely full of it. And so my first teacher in the group was Jim Mullen, who I did a eulogy on my Facebook page. If you go there, it's about 10 or 12 posts down. And he's just a legend, right? And so Jim and I were spending more time together talking, and I was doing journalistic work with the paranormal already. And I did this big interview with David Icke in the lobby of the Bay Area UFO Expo in Santa Clara, back in 2006 or 7. And it was just awesome. Good power pack, 35-minute. Jordan Maxwell watched it. Anthony Hilder was there. John Rhodes was there. It was just one of my all-time high points. And so being at that expo and seeing all those people really just lit me up like a candle, right? And so as I started to talk about those things with Jim Mullen doing my law studies, he tells Harold about it. And at one point, the law study group had me show my David Icke interview to them, and they loved it. That was awesome. Here I am, I'm the youngest person in the group, and everyone's got me by 10 or 15 years, some by 25 years at that time. These guys love what I'm doing, all right? So I was welcome into that group. We all became great friends. I'm still friends with many of them right now, the ones that are still alive. And Harold and I met at that group. You know, he became interested in what I was doing after seeing that David Icke interview. And so we began talking. And so that relationship has lasted since 2005 for 15 years until a week ago or so when he left this earth. But during that time, he was with me at the New Living Expo 8 or 9 years ago when I interviewed J.J. Hurtak. He's been with me up to Mount Shasta, and we've seen UFOs at the same time. We saw Max the Crystal Skull at the yoga studio in Mount Shasta City. You know, and to give you an idea of Harold's sense of humor, I love his sense of humor. I was there at Mount Shasta City during the weekend when Max the Crystal Skull was there, and for you Florida people, Max the Crystal Skull was under the care of Lee Patrick Hanks. Does that name sound familiar, Theresa?
Yes, all the owners, but I told you we've had some die. Okay. But yeah, we're still working on getting everybody off the planet with the circle and the skulls.
Okay, so Lee Patrick Hanks was the young boy in the Gulf Breeze incident books by who's the Navy guy that you know, Bruce Maccabee. And so Lee Patrick Hanks, to talk about a small world, he's in charge of Max the Crystal Skull. So they were having a presentation in Shasta. Harold went up there with me and my buddy who I'm staying with in Sacramento. His name is Sid. He's written the book series Legends of the Ages. And it's the giant coffee table book. And so anyway, there's 40 volumes, and it's incredible. But us three were up there to see Max the Crystal Skull. And Sid and I were staying in the same room, and Harold had his own room, all right? So it's the morning time. Sid and I are just getting up, and we hear a knock at the door. It's the FBI. And we're like, oh, my God. We're both like, we've got marijuana in the room, right? And we're like, oh, crap, it's illegal. We're busted. And there's another knock. It's the FBI. And then we're like, we didn't know what to do. And all of a sudden, from behind the door, we hear, it's the Fuller Brush Institute. And so I open the door. It's Harold. God, I love that guy. I miss that guy so much. But Harold had a really corny sense of humor. And like my grandpa, when Harold would crack a joke, he'd like look to see if I'd react. And then he'd start chuckling himself. And then I couldn't help but laugh with him because it was just so much humor and light and joy coming out of him, you know?
You just flushed all your marijuana down the toilet, Harold.
No. Right. We were one step away from that. It didn't happen, thank God. But and I don't smoke nearly as much anymore now, but that's a different story. But back then, you know, he really knew how to push our buttons, that sucker. I bet he's laughing now, looking down. But so Harold and I became very close. We had lots of incidences together. We experienced some things in Mount Shasta together. And although I didn't agree with him on lots of things early on, I learned more the way in which he was describing things and what he meant by them, I began to see that more and more. And so the last lesson that I got with Harold was that, I studied deliverance at this church in Yuba City. And for years, like, Harold was actually the first person to go with me, because we heard this story about Anton LaVey and how this church had an occult level spiritual warfare with Anton LaVey and his crew over the spiritual legal rights of his daughter, Anton's daughter, who at the time was called Ray LaVey. Well, long story short, I'm trying to help an abductee girlfriend of mine in Chico, and I just had an experience of this entity come through her. Scared the bejesus out of me. I thought this little girl was going to kick my butt. I'm a big guy, right? And so I don't say that lightly. I was scared. And her voice changed and her eyes changed, and it was like right out of a movie, man. So I prayed to Jesus, Jesus, show me what I can do to help this girl. And I tell you, as honestly as I can be, later that night, we had our law study group. And out of the blue, this old guy, Ernie Stedman, says, "Hey, Bret, you should go check out this church in Yuba City. They had a magical battle with a wizard and killed him using the name of Christ." And I almost came out of my seat. We don't talk about that stuff. We don't get that spiritual. Only Harold and I would get that spiritual. Maybe a little bit Jim Mullen. Nobody else would go on that level. So I saw that as an answer to my prayers. So Harold and I went the next day and experienced a deliverance seminar ceremony for the first time. So that's a whole other story, okay? But he never went back to that church with me. And he kind of, although he was very polite about it, I got the feeling that he thought that was low-level stuff. And so it was fine for somebody like me on my path. I'm not nearly as advanced as Harold. And so I never let that really hurt my ego or anything, because when you start studying the Ascended Master stuff, you realize that it's not a race. You just have to work on yourself. And whatever level you're at, as long as you know that you're on the path. And so that maybe that was one of my lessons in itself, right? To not react and take it personal. But I'm telling you, man, I talked about it. I'd go twice a year, and I would have just these incredible experiences watching people be delivered. And some of it happening to me too, that Harold finally went back this last October. The last week in October they had it. They had to switch the dates. It's usually in August, the second one. But because of COVID, they switched it. And so anyway, so we went to this thing, and part of what I've been praying about is to be shown the truth about these different religions, like the Rastafari. Was Selassie the second coming of Christ? I want to know the truth to that, because that has ramifications if that's true. And I also wanted to know, was there a connection between these fundamental Christians that I was studying in Yuba City, who part of their legend is they took out Anton LaVey. Some would call him the most wicked man on earth. And was there a connection between them and the Ascended Master tradition that Harold was following? And so there was two areas where that came true when Harold showed up at this next event last October. That was the second time he'd gone. He went to all 5 days, and he became friends with the pastors. Like the first day, they became friends, right? They just connected. And so it wasn't until I saw this. Now, mind you, this is my 6th year of going there, twice a year. It was my 12th deliverance seminar. 12th is my number. And in that session, both Cheryl Bryan and Dave Bryan mentioned things that are exactly on par with Harold's teachings from the Ascended Masters. And it's in my notes somewhere, and I haven't looked. I'm sorry I didn't prepare that for this conversation. And it was something that I was going to talk to Harold about, but he passed away on me, that little guy. And so I can't tell you what the second thing is right now because I forget. But the first thing was Cheryl Bryan started talking about the tiny flame inside your heart. And that's what Harold has been telling me about for years as the way you begin to propagate the violet flame, and how that's part of your spiritual work, is that you propagate the violet flame for yourself and you grow it like a plant in your garden. You tend to it regularly by doing decrees, in other words, by verbalizing certain words and phrases in a repetitive manner. You will grow this to where not only will it fill your body, supposedly, according to Harold, right? He's the person that I studied the Ascended Masters through the most. I would say Diane Robbins would be second. But Harold would say that as that violet flame engulfs your body, you start to expand it beyond your body, and you start affecting other people and your situations around you. And so while Harold was not a rich man, he always had enough to get by. He lived comfortably. But what Harold, I think, really showed was that as he propagated this violet flame within himself, everything around him became peaceful. Nobody had conflict when they were around Harold. Just as recently as this summer, I had a really bad incident with a landlord who wrecked a bunch of my stuff while I was gone. And it happened to be in Orville where Harold was living, and I knew to go right over to Harold's house because he would have a calming effect on me, and that's what he did. I don't know what I would have done. I try not to get that angry anymore. And Harold was able to just calm me down. And he says that that's from one thing and one thing only, and that's the propagation of the violet flame. So coming back to the church in Yuba City this past October during the deliverance seminar, when Cheryl Bryan talked about this little tiny flame in your heart that you need to cultivate, I nudged Harold and said, "Oh, you were right. You were right." And so there is crossover. Excuse me. There is crossover between what these people teach in Yuba City, which many would consider to be fundamental Christians, but even the fundamental Christians don't like these people. So that's one of the reasons why I love this church, is because not even the fundamental Christians like them. They're so different. So anyway,
what's Harold's
that was
last name? What's Harold's last name?
Bauman.
Last name.
Bauman.
And what? Bauman. So why do I know Harold Bauman? What does he? How would one know him? How do you know?
You know, you'd have to be either involved in the Ascended Master stuff here on the West Coast, because I know there's different veins of it around the world. Jesus was the Ascended Master in Christianity, but if you go to Buddhism, that's the whole thing, is that the whole Ascended Master program is out front. That's the whole religion, is you become an Ascended Master. And so there's Ascended Master stuff really all around the world, and the Ascended Master stuff from Saint Germain really ties all that together. What?
Did he write a book about it? I mean, what's his notoriety? What did he do?
Well, he's written a book called The Ladder. He's written some other books. He was in the process of republishing them so he could get his stuff back out there. But of course, he was ready to leave, so he didn't really want to finish those books. I'm teasing him right now. But Harold was known to some interesting people, like the Hertacks knew him. Okay. TJ knew him, and I didn't know that. I'm like, you know TJ Morris? He's like, yeah, and he starts laughing. Oh, you know how he would do. And so anyway, so there's some more stuff involved with that, and TJ can let you in on that if she wants to. But Harold, go ahead. I was just going to wrap up. Harold became. I've had several women teachers, and the last woman teacher I had was a woman by the name of Sonia Kalkar, and she used to be on the Big Island of Hawaii. And she, at the time, I was dealing with some pretty heavy stuff, and she said that I needed a man to complete my training. And I didn't know it at the time, but looking back now, I could say Harold was that man. So that's basically, I love the guy. And so you'd have to be in the right circles to have met him. So if you weren't an Ascended Master, or if you didn't attend a donkey baseball show back in the 70s, you might not know Harold.
Okay. No, I wasn't in the West in the 70s. I was in Pittsburgh. And,
okay.
Yeah, that's where I grew up, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. But we all have our experiences that we bring to play. So I studied with a White Brotherhood group from State College, where Penn State University is, from 89 to 93. That was pretty magical. Okay, well, let's begin to wrap this up. TJ, do you have any questions or comments or feedback for Bret with his story? And we can always bookmark this and do it again another time. Pick up.
That's right.
Yeah, this was Bret and I happened to be on the phone when Janet called and said my show with her was canceled. So, folks, this is what happens. So, Bret,
I got roped in again.
Yeah, but think about it. How long did you know Harold? But see, Janet doesn't know anything you know, Bret. So,
well, I wouldn't say that, but
well, I mean, with me and you.
Oh, okay.
And then she doesn't know.
Anyway, we all have pieces.
Parts we don't have. Well, this is the importance of the radio shows, folks, my job in public relations from up there and where Harold is now and my husband, they were both ascended masters in this reality. But now, if everybody will go listen to one of the old teachers of David Icke in the last 40 hours, I've been sending my students, my neophytes in my world, which is Ascension Center Organization or Alien Contact Organization, or both, to go look at David Icke in the last 48 hours. He's talking about all the different mythologies and how he's using them. And I know him on a very, very different psychic level, but unfortunately, when you work as a psychic, you can't tell all the people just meeting you, especially if you're working as a psychic. So that's like being Ascended Master, because I wrote a book, Ascension Masters, as well, but they took it off the market. So there are people keeping you from knowing things. So Bret and Brad are working together, and they're both on the right track. And now, Bret, did Brad know? I don't remember if he knew Harold or not. Did he ever meet Harold?
No.
Wow. So you're the golden key with Janet, me, and Lorian.
Okay.
But
I'll stay open to that.
Well, what it was conventions, and we can go into my ACO event managers for the Ascension Center organization and our deal with the crystal skulls. And I did 2 events with another crystal skull owner, Marta Thomas. And do you know Sam from Houston? Dr. Sam Osmanagich?
Osmanagich?
Yeah. Osmanagich.
The guy with the pyramids in Bosnia?
Yes. Do you know him?
I've never met him, but I would very much like to meet him.
Yeah, me too. I've never met him on the planet. He's done several radio shows with me. And he works with a lot of people with Marta, and Marta helped him with that guy that's on Ancient Aliens a lot. That Richards guy, you've seen him, right? He has anyway, Childers, maybe. Rich Childers, maybe? Do you know who that
David
is?
Hatcher Childers?
Yeah, do you know him?
I've met him, yeah.
Well, anyway, what about...
Jay, I'm going to have to wrap this up.
Go ahead, Janet. I'll close it out.
I'm going to say goodbye.
Okay.
So
Okay.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure, Janet.
It was great. Yeah, it was great chatting with you. Good track you're on. I'm looking forward to hearing more. When will you have that book out? Do you have any idea, or is this something that's just beginning?
I would love to say, in my heart, I want to say it's going to be done by the summer before I go on my excursion on the mountain.
Okay, make it so then. You just put that public that's your intention, and the universe always supports what we want and need, and it will be real. It will happen. All right. Well,
awesome.
Thank you, Theresa, for doing a show with me again, and I've got to get going here. So much love and blessings and aloha. Thank you.
Aloha, Janet.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Janet, for being my friend and doing another show.
You're welcome.
Aloha, okay, bye-bye. Bye. Bye-bye. Now, folks, regarding, you've got a lot of intelligence, you're very smart, you're using your journalism, your public relations. I knew about your journalism, but I don't remember us ever discussing your public relations in this reality in 3D.
Yeah, I actually shook the hand of E.L. Bernays when I was in college at Chico State. He came to visit.
So you're very well connected with several people in human form that are high energy.
Not necessarily that I know of. You know, at the time, it seems like I'm just at the right place at the right time. I happen to be a PR major student, and Chico State is a nationally recognized PR institution. And so that's why he was there, because Chico State was this great public relations school. Well, I didn't go there because of public relations. I went there to play soccer, and I chose a business degree major so my parents would think I was responsible. And so after flunking out my first year, not quite flunking out, and redshirting, which means that they're going to groom me for a year before they bring me out on the field to play in real games, soccer games, I switched to public relations because my buddy said that it's easier because there's a lot of math in the business major. And my buddy was like, well, there's way less math and there's all kinds of women. So I was like, okay, let's become a journalist. So I became a journalist. That's a true story. I became a journalist because there was less math and there was more women in that major. So
do you have journalism or public relations?
Well, it's both. It's a journalism degree with an option in public relations.
Very nice. That's perfect for what I need right now with a lot of my vloggers and bloggers. So if you want to help me, you haven't seen my new mission on Earth as the director that was assigned to me by cyberspace algorithms is Ascension. Well, you already know about Ascension because you're part of it, Ascension Center Organization. We have a federal ID for that, but we've dropped it down to American Communications Online for the 3D reality. And then we're helping everybody get off of the old way broadcasting and bringing them into the now, into VOD, videos on demand for live streaming and communications. So I hope you'll help me with that, but I know you're very busy. But you and I talked.
I'll tell you what. Look, I'll tell you, this is the issue. It's just I need money to survive. So right now, I don't even have my own place, and I don't start work again until January. And I'm looking for a new place. I have money, but as soon as I jump into a new place, I got to keep working to pay that rent, you know?
Well, where's Bret Olson? He's always got a lot of money to travel.
Yeah, I asked him about that too, and he said he gets paid in royalties with books. He's got like 8 books.
Well, does he have a human wife or anybody biological to live with?
Well, his wife's not human. No, I'm just kidding. No, he's a single guy.
And if you're both going to work with me in the future with video, I really think you two, since you're already thought of on the same wavelength. But remember, the comedy wavelength goes far with Ascension Masters. But right now, David Icke is not sure because he's going on all the mythologies. But now remember, he doesn't claim to be a psychic, so he's not getting it direct. He's had some people that's helped him, and he's very brilliant, and I like him. Okay, and he's
taking drugs too.
Huh?
He's taking ayahuasca too.
Oh, okay. Well, good. You guys may have you?
I tried it once, but it didn't really do anything to me. But I've done mushrooms and acid a bunch of times.
Well, that's just your experiences on the planet. Now, do you know Dr. Rick Allen Miller?
I've heard the name. I'm not familiar with his work, though.
But he's good friends with Carrie Cassidy. You know her.
I've never met her, but I know of her.
Well, you know Brad Olson. Brad just was on her show, and she just did her book. I don't know that she ever wrote a book, but her and Brad came out on her show in the last few days, too. So if everybody that's listening to this, I've got to post it because this will be like pre-production. But it's impromptu. Now, I did have it up on my TJ Morris ET Radio where I've I do live and keep archives. And so some of these people, you may have archives in my radio, but Bret started with me in 2012, and he's always been loyal about saying he'd be in this ACO. So I always wanted to keep him around with journalism, but I didn't really know about his public relations. So that's great. So if you can, you said you talked to Phil Lang, which you didn't discuss how you know him, except y'all both lived with Harold. But
Yeah, at different times, yeah.
okay, and then how do you know Brad Olson?
I met him at Contact in the Desert in 2016. No, actually, I met him in Sacramento in 2015 when we were both speakers for Javier and Lorian.
Okay, now Javier is in my group, my Ascension Center group. So Javier,
Okay.
I sort of told Javi about Lorian and Janet doing events. And all that everybody can confirm on my radio. You can go back in the archives on TJ Morris ET Radio and find a lot of history on these events we're talking about, because I never attended any of them. But before Lorian had her event and before she was on Revolution Radio, that's how old I am. But she never met me. She just knows I wouldn't talk to her super soldiers, and so we had a rift, and then we had a rift between her and Janet. So Janet and her were going to do a conference, and Janet gave her $500. So I don't know. That might have been for yours instead of Javier's. But now you want to mention the one of the financiers, John Tenayuka, Tenconics Productions, or
For
no?
who? Finance
Well,
for who?
you stayed with John in one of his rooms, or was that Javier? Because
It was Javier.
John paid for everything.
that was Javier.
All right, now why don't you tell people his last name? Because he's young, and the last time I knew, he moved from California to Sedona, Arizona, but I don't know
Right.
where he is. Do you know where he is now?
Last I heard, he was in Mexico.
He went back to the old country.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure why.
Well,
There's rumors out there, right? I don't want to be spreading rumors, but
his
he and I really don't really communicate very much anymore. So part of that is because I think he's in Mexico.
Okay, he was one of our event planners, folks, ACO event managers. Lorian didn't get on our roster because she went with Revolution and did her own marketing, and she was a bookkeeper, and she came on and talked about her dancing when she was a lot younger. So I related to her as a dancer. So that's how we talked mostly about that. But she was so nervous because she was representing like an agent or publicist for another gentleman. And so she was promoting him. And before she came on our show, but she didn't know I knew Mike Ringley, and Mike and I were assistant friends in the Kentucky tobacco musician world. So she didn't know what she was getting into. So I always knew everything she was doing. Between a Mad Painter, Mike Ringley, and Janet Lesson, and Tommy Hawksblood, and Javier Sandoval. And then you met John Tenayuka through Javier. Is that correct?
Yeah, in 2015, along with Tommy Hawksblood.
Oh, so you met Javier and John and Tommy at the same event?
Well, I already knew Javier. He's the one. He asked me to speak, but I never met Tommy or John until that day.
How about that? Well, that's a whole
weekend.
Story too. So you've got a lot of event public relations that you haven't shared, but you should put all those characters or get permission. I'm sure John would like to share that event. I'm sure Lorian would, and I'm sure Tommy Hawksblood would. But I guess you just have to get permission to use any part of that. I don't know, but I gave you open source on my Ascension Age, right? On my book. And besides, Google has it. Google asked for the rights to it a long time ago and put it in their Google library, 2 or 3 of my books. So you may want to research that. And then the Ascension Age is, remember, Knowing Cosmology with a K, Knowing Cosmology. And the second line is Ascension Age. And then back in the day when I worked for Dick Vanderploeg, I wrote Ascension Age 2012 and beyond. But all I did was throw some of his articles. So a lot of my books are just stuff I wrote for Dirk Vanderploeg at his request while he was working with Phyllis Galdi and what is that little short dude's name on TV that had UFO
Bill,
magazine?
Bill Burns.
Bill. Yeah, Bill. And he probably knows me a little bit from his wife, but there's a whole bunch of people that have no clue who I am, but yet I'm somehow involved. So you need to write about the different people at their levels, sort of like LinkedIn does first, second, and third, because a lot of people in our social media feel like they know who we are by personality name or by event. But I never went to any events. Now I was pre-production on the Pyramid Con, and I got up some Facebooks I haven't been marketing or working for Marta Thomas, but some of them are starting to come back up for the pyramid. Now she's a crystal skull, but when she went to Egypt, they asked her, our government did, because she was doing public relations for me and Harold and a lot of people, but she wasn't allowed to do certain rituals in Egypt. So you remember back in the day when you could go to Egypt, and then there was the time when you couldn't because you had to have security. So she's way before all that. But she did a lot of work with that David Childers, Samus Montaguich. But she's one of those that stays in the background. I took her picture, and that was a big deal in this world because she has a lot of mystical, magical parts of her from past lives. But she's a beautiful woman. And she was a promoter and actually a producer and a event. She went through MUFON and got her, when we were paying $75 for the manual in MUFON with Captain Rick McDonald. Captain McDonald, but there was Jan Aldrich, Jan Harzan, Janet Lesson, and Janet me. I'm a Jan. Just so you know. Well, I guess it's time to go because they're cutting even my windpipe. I had my neck cut and my back cut. But staying in human form is really hard to do. I stay off planet as much as I can. Well, Bret, if you can, go listen to the show we did. Can you get YouTube at all or no?
It's a little tricky where I'm at. I have to go somewhere else. That's where I've gotten better internet, at least Skype or Facebook calling or something like that. I have to do that on my laptop, and because it has a camera and audio. And there's my buddy's son is a tech guy, and he so far hasn't been able to figure out why my computer won't talk to his router. So I'd have to run a big long cable into the room. It's real cumbersome. This guy's already doing so much for me. I don't want to push it, So
I've got 3 laptops, but they've got various production stuff on them. Well, let's get into VOD, and Brad's all on top of that, and some of his friends, and going to the AFM and things like that, and AMF. I forgot which way it goes. I'll get them all the acronyms mixed up, and IFTA. But I may meet you guys over in LA. I mean, we may all meet, me, Brad, and you, or whoever's supposed to in the future. But I would like to meet the people I'm going to be doing business with, if you don't mind. So let's get your book done, and let's get some documentaries done, and make sure you do your Mount Shasta for us, and then talk a little bit about your past lives when you were, extraterrestrial and walking around, and then how we got you into the Yeti suit in Tibet when we came down, extraterrestrials, and then we put you guys in charge in Tibet to, make sure that, the history was guarded. So that's why they have all those flags and things like that. So look into all of that because you're a big part of that in a past life with Tommy Hawksblood. That's why y'all met. And then the Javier Sandoval and the John Tenayuca. Now, they're warriors of the Jaguar out of Mexico, the Toltecs. But you did say you read the 4 Agreements by the Toltec shaman. Do you remember the name or any part of that?
Don Ruiz, the four Agreements.
Yeah,
right?
Can you spell his name, please?
Donruiz. There's a middle name in there. It might be Alejandro. I forget. But there's 3 names. It's Don Ruiz, though, the first and last.
Well, can you email that to me, or you can't do? Can you do texting?
Yeah, I can text, or I got the internet. It's not like I can't do the internet. I just don't have speakers and a camera on my desktop.
Oh, okay. I got you.
So I
Okay.
got, that
One
means
way.
I have to use my laptop, and then that's a little bit more involved. I might have to buy a cable, and I'm in survival mode right now. So
Yeah, folks,
so
we're in lockdown right now with COVID-19. Plus, excuse me, he's got a lot of growth and he's taken on a lot of responsibility with one of his teachers passing. We're asking him to step up to the plate for his grid in the higher realms. So you're doing a great job, Bret. Please don't lose the energy and try to, do more higher energy with the however you believe. So, but I'll tell everybody once again, I don't know if Jen heard or not, because David Icke stayed in her house and so did Andrew Bishago. So you mentioned both of them. So
yeah.
I appreciate your path. I asked you some questions about books you've read, and just stay on the path. You're on a great journey, and you've been a big supporter, anchoring and holding the energy for Ascension Center organization, and as well as the Ascension Masters and the Alien Contact Org with Janet and me. So the next one will probably be without Janet, and so you and I will continue this story, and hopefully this will help you because you got a lot of bio in here, and that was the main purpose, was to sort of let Janet hear who you were and everybody else that doesn't know you. So thank you for being transparent.
I appreciate the opportunity to talk about some of this stuff. It's at the one hand, it's pretty personal, and you want to be careful who you say that kind of stuff to. But on the other hand, when you know that your audience is as educated as yours is, then it's fun. I had fun, so we'll do it again.
Thank you so much. Yes, a lot of it is knowing, and the other half is believing, and somewhere in synchronicity and serendipity, when you least expect it, you realize you are the author of your own life story. So, with that said, Bret Lueder, again, you have really humbled me and made me much more than I am in the past, and making me mindful. So you're very good at mindfulness and consciousness. So I assure you that you are on the path of intelligence outside of the consciousness, and helping us in live streaming in the future. And your content providing is going to be so valuable to the world. So thank you so much. I look forward to you able to get back into doing tourism documentaries with Brad Olson. And I can't wait to see how you two create with me in the future with Ascension Center Organization, American Communications Online, and my newest UAP Associates, which Brad hasn't got to research anything I do. So I'm a new human form in his reality, other than through Harold. And who else told you about me?
Phil.
Oh, Phil told you about me. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
that's going to be a fun time. Maybe we can get Brad, you, and Phil on the same show. Wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah, at some point, I think really we need me, you, and Phil, I think, first, because we need to kind of lay the foundation for who Phil is and what's going on. And then maybe you and I will have one with Brad. Okay. And then after those two shows, then we'll have one with all of us.
That sounds good. Write those down. That's good intel. Okay, folks, we do open source intelligence, and we do public relations work for all levels of the universes and all the parallel universes, all of the multidimensional beings and all the realms and all the planes. And it's not easy because everybody visits this planet and they come together and they're all trying to figure out who came from what galaxy. And a lot of them are just working on their planets, what planet they came from. So a lot of our psychics are helping them, and a lot of our people in the mutual UFO universe with Kathy Martin. I talked to Kathy in the last couple of days, and anyway, it's really busy season for us on the planet in this epoch called the Ascension Age. And Bret is doing the public relations work after the conjunction, and a lot of people left, but believe me, they are mortals and they didn't die. So please don't worry about them, because we always say they're in a lot better place. So love and light,
Right.
Bret. Thank you so much, and I look forward
Thank
to
you, TJ.
the next shows. Thank you,
Yeah, I
Janet.
appreciate. Yeah, I
Yeah.
appreciate your very kind words, TJ. And I had lots of fun. And we'll do it again soon.
Yeah, you keep me laughing, but remember what Harold always said, the one true wave through all the universes is the power of the dimensions, sounds, realms, and it goes through, cuts through all of the levels as an ascension master, is that one of humor, because not all the extraterrestrials and aliens have a sense of humor, nor do all of them have emotions. Many of them are like Spock and work from logic and reasoning and science level only. But we're working on that, folks. So being a biological does include human intelligence, but human emotions too. So stay with the body, mind, spirit level, folks. And remember Bret Lueder, because he's going to be very, very famous due to the conjunction, and that he is awakened to the fact that he is doing public relations work for all extraterrestrials, not just the Shambhala groups, which I am a part of, by the way. Under, over, and out. All levels. Thank you, Bret. I can't wait to work with you in the
Thank you.
future. Thank you.
Yeah, I look forward to it. You have a great night.
You too. And look for this on YouTube, Bret. It'll be up there in about as soon as I can put it up there.
Okay. Thank
Okay.
you.
I'll put
All
your
right.
name
Have
so
a
you
great
can
night,
find
TJ.
it. Thank you, Bret. You
Okay.
did wonderful. Great show. Great
Thank
show.
you. Merry Christmas. Merry
You
Christmas.
too.
All right. Bye-bye.